if you're using data tracking and you're not now changing anything in the lifestyle, I almost think at that point, just don't track it. All right, what is up, everybody? Episode 22 of Pursuit of Balance. We're going to talk about you cannot track, or you can't hack what you don't track, right? And this is going to be a big one, talking about technology, wearables, and just overall why I think most people underutilize tracking, right? And this doesn't matter if it's just in relationship to health, or if this is in relationship to your business, or this is in relationship to your finances personally at home. Like, I am a big believer on data. And I'm going to talk about kind of pros and cons too, because I really want to highlight, obviously, is tracking something going to be sustainable for all of us year round for the rest of our lives? And the answer is most likely not, right? So this was something like I turned my Whoop back on. For those that don't have a Whoop band, it's just basically like a health tracker or fitness tracker. You know, I've used Oura Ring for a very long time. You guys think about Apple Watches, you think about Fitbit, you think about continuous glucose monitors. You have a metabolic heart Panoe when you think about tracking body composition, when you think about tracking movement screens, when you think about tracking numbers with your exercise and your workouts. Like, there's so many things that we can track. And I say this to every single person that I talk to on the front end that's signing up, that like, I'm a big believer that we're going to track as much as we can in the beginning. And then I'm going to start to really fine tune the variables of what's important to you and what I actually think is important for us at that frequency to continue tracking, right? And the frequency is obviously going to dictate the volume over time, right? So it's like, you know, if someone has a weight loss goal, yeah, I might have someone doing a reassessment weekly or once every 2 weeks. If I have someone that doesn't really have a huge weight goal or is in a good body composition, yeah, I might have you do it 4 times a year, twice a year, right? I don't think it's something you need to really be creating more awareness around if it's in a good place, because in my belief, I think awareness can, you know, lead to anxiety for some people. But tracking, just like to start off, like first things first, it's going to create 2 things. Number one, it's going to create awareness, right? Number 2 is going to create adherence, because it's going to give us data and it's going to give us things that we can obviously, hopefully, more importantly, take action towards fixing, right? Without the data, like I always say to the team, that if you're not assessing and reassessing, you are just guessing with your client. You know, I had a dinner with a buddy of mine that's opening up a gym. And I was telling him, I was like, well, kind of give me your process. I would love to hear kind of like your sales process, like how you're going through it. I'd love to hear your process of fulfillment with the clients. Like, he was taking me through everything. And I was like, you really don't have much assessing. And he goes, yeah. He's like, I was like, well, take it however you want. But like, my biggest tip that I can give you right now is like, I would put some form of assessing in there, because the one thing, and I say this all the time as well, that like motivation is a derivative of the progress that you make in life, right? Your work, your exercise, your relationship, your health, your whatever, right? Your finances, whatever it could be. When you're starting to see progress and you're starting to move the right direction, there is this inherent change in the psyche that is going to create motivation, right? Because your body likes to see that, right? And your brain likes to feel and see that as well. So when you're starting to go that direction, you now are able to kind of leverage this additional energy source that's being provided from you that you are creating, right? So I always like to tell people that, like, knowing how the psyche works, if you don't track anything or you don't have any objective measurement, you are only relying on your subjective self, right? And I'll give you guys an example when you think about the gym, right? When you think about looking good or losing weight or gaining weight or losing body fat, building muscle, whatever your goal might be, looking in yourself in the mirror every day when you're brushing your teeth or getting out of the shower, or seeing yourself in the gym workout every day, there's these little micro changes that are going to happen every single day, right? In week, in month, year, they're going to compound over time, right? But the micro changes to the visual eye when you see yourself every day, multiple times a day, it's pretty fucking hard to actually see that, right? A lot of times, like, I don't know. I know everyone's gone through this. If you are in a place where you've been pretty consistent with your routine and health, right, or fitness, and then you go see some family during the holidays like this time of year, and they're like, whoa, what are you doing? You look great. Last time I saw you was summertime. You look like you lost 10 pounds, right? Sometimes you will be like, oh, cool, like, I'm glad you noticed, but we won't we have a hard time noticing that. Yes, we can start to feel the clothes changing a little bit. Yes, we can maybe start to see our energies a little bit better. But like I said, the micro changes over time, it's hard to see that because you're in time seeing it. Someone that you're seeing once every few weeks or months, they're probably going to notice some changes, right? So I always like to remind people that like that's why I think relying on subjective only is a pretty dangerous place, especially in the beginning, right? Because think about it this way. In the beginning, I think majority of people that I work with as far as clients, right? Majority of you maybe even listening to this are only going to view your success in the gym as a number on a scale, right? And that is the farthest thing from the truth. What if you stayed the same weight but you lost 5 pounds of muscle or lost 5 pounds of fat, put 5 pounds of muscle on? Like you're net even, right? But you would look incredibly different, right? Because you have way more muscle and you have less fat, right? What if you improved your mobility, your range of motion got better? What if you now are able to squat without knee pain or run without knee pain? What if you are actually getting stronger? What if you are actually running at a better pace now with a lower heart rate, right? Like there's so many things that we can track, right? So I think like the more variables I can give somebody, and this is where like I say that like my job is like you're paying us or myself to present this information to A, give you structure, B, hold you accountable to it, and then, C, I'm going to create motivation for you by presenting these things to you. Because why I say this to the coaches all the time is like, if you guys are not reassessing, like I said, you're guessing, but more importantly, you're also leaving a huge opportunity for that client to be like, I'm not really seeing a lot of value here because I'm not seeing the changes. When in reality, maybe they did make a lot of change, but you didn't present that information because it's hard. Like I said, it's hard for us to notice that. Like, I don't feel like for me personally, it's like, I don't feel like I'm getting stronger. I don't feel like I'm getting leaner, or it's like, those are things, but like, and then I look at like an InBody and I'll do it every once in a while. Like when I am trying to be a little bit more dialed in certain areas, whatever it might be. And I'm like, oh, wow. Okay, cool. I did lose 2%. I guess I am a little bit leaner than I thought, but it's hard for us, I think, to visually or subjectively kind of feel those things. So I want to go through a little bit more specific. So like, what is the data that I think is super important to track? I'll try to keep this a little bit more in relationship to health, but as always, I'm a lifestyle guy, so I'll talk about everything. And then like, what are the systems that I personally use that I think are really important to use so you guys can actually look at the data, and more importantly, like what is the data that you can use to apply moving forward? Because at the end of the day, remember that like that awareness that it's going to create is going to take you two directions. You're either not going to take action and have a lot of anxiety, right? If I see a lot of data, but I don't do anything to address it, to fix it or grow it, I'm going to naturally, as a byproduct, become a little anxious because that presentation, and for some people, just to be clear on this, like I would say, like the nutrition example, right? There's a lot of people that have developed like a very unhealthy relationship with food, or, eating disorders or borderline disorder. And it's because of like, they're like, I don't like tracking calories. I don't like weighing food. And I'm like, totally get it. Like, let's figure out a different strategy for you that can allow us to move towards the goal that you have, but with a different system, right? We have plenty of tools in the toolbox. I don't have to use this only. But I do like to, like, as a reinforcement or like kind of empower people again, to just remind them that like, are you okay with like tracking your workouts, right? And like your weights there, or your times and condition. Like, oh yeah, I love that. And I'm like, okay, well, understand that that is the same method and approach that you're using for performance in the gym that you're not okay with using in nutrition, right? So like, just, it's kind of two sides of that conversation. It's like, A, I don't want that to lead to an unhealthy relationship, right? And B, maybe I want to have that good, healthy relationship you do have with performance tracking, maybe be something that allows you to open your mind to like, let's find something that allows us to build and develop a healthy relationship with the food tracking, right? So that's always something I kind of like just make sure is like a disclaimer, or to kind of pre-frame that for some of you guys, that like, don't cherry pick the data that you feel that is like, you have a good relationship or a bad relationship with. Maybe open your mind towards when you're more unhealthy, or just be more cautious of the other things that you could possibly be tracking to make sure they don't go that way. Because I will say that normally what happens for most of us, that where we quote unquote become unhealthy with our relationship, is generally because we're not seeing the results from it, or because it just consumes our life, right? Like there needs to be a balance of like finding, strategies that work, but also just being open to the fact that like, unfortunately, progress is not linear, right? Like you're not going to just continually lose weight. You're not going to continually just build muscle. You're not going to continually just get stronger. You're not going to continually just get faster. You're not going to continually just get rich. Over time, over the macro, sure, Like, if I were to zoom out on like a 5 year, a 10 year, a 20 year, a 30 year for somebody, yeah, there might be progress. But at the end of the day, like the way I look at it, this is something I say for myself, even though like I will say I'm never really going to be completely content with the way I look or feel or train or whatever it might be. But I will say that I've kind of been in maintenance mode for a very long time because like I'm happy with my weight, right? I would like to maybe be a couple percentage a little bit leaner personally myself, right? I would love to just have as much muscle to look as good as possible. And I really like to feel strong and be fast. When I say feel strong, I think being strong can be a little subjective. I think for me, there is like a threshold of like, what is the desire to have more strength here besides ego, versus like what is something that's going to optimize longevity for me. That's my bias of how I view it. But like there's going to be moments where you're just going to want to be cool with maintenance. And like that maintenance by definition is progress, because getting to somewhere is one thing, staying there is another thing, right? There's plenty of people, like think about these stories with athletes, make millions and millions and millions of dollars and then lose it, right? So getting somewhere is hard, but keeping it or growing it or whatever it might be is going to be the hardest thing as well, right? Because that is what's going to be making it all sustainable, right? So it's like use data, but ideally maybe become intuitive, right? Learn to kind of go with ebbs and flows of seasons, right? Because like for me, it's like when I'm big on finances and business and like just being aware of numbers all the time. It's funny, if I were to like zoom into a quarter, I'm like, oh, that was like a great quarter. We made a lot of money. And I'll look at one quarter, I'm like, what the fuck happened? And it's like, oh, I had a lot of expenses, right? Or I just like spent a lot of money that quarter. I had a grow part, or I was opening up a new location. So it's like in the micro, you might see these huge drops. But then I zoom out and I'm like, okay, it's trending the right way, right? So just like be aware of like how you're tracking that too, as far as like time frame too, because I think like as a coach, my job is to be transparent with somebody to like let them know what's realistic. But let's start with some of the data tracking, right? So I would say number one, first things first, like body composition and body weight, great starting point when we think about health, right? There is this conversation around like BMI is no longer important, right? And I will argue this a little bit. I've said this for probably majority of my career, like, don't worry about BMI. Like my BMI, according to my in-body, says I'm over, right? Like I should actually, like my BMI should be lower. Here's the argument to it. If I have a really lean body fat percentage and I have really high muscle density, then like my weight overall will be higher. So making my BMI higher. But that by definition, like is as a healthier composition. But the other argument to it, which I've now kind of just like brought up more and more to people, is it's still very clear that the data shows that the heavier you are, the chances of you dying earlier is there. Like all cause mortality, right? So like your body is carrying extra load. It's just extra stress. So the heavier you are, the more stress is in the body. Okay. But body composition is still going to be more important than that. I wouldn't stress about BMI so much over composition, right? Because there is going to be a body fat percentage for you that you're going to feel great. You're going to feel confident. You're going to look great. But more importantly, there's going to be a body composition and a window of that where your body is going to just function optimally as far as your health goes, right? As far as your hormones go, as far as everything like that. So for most of us, if I were to think about a male, I would say, hey, anywhere between like that 10 to 20% is going to be a really, really solid window, right? Or maybe 12 to 20 or something like that, right? For a female, you're going to have a little bit more. So maybe it's like the low end is like 16 to 18, maybe for my athletes, even a little bit lower, but like 16 to 18 kind of being the low end of the window. And I always say like 28 for most of us, or ideally for a female for sure being under 30% is a great healthy place. So like as a male, if you're over the 20+% on body fat, or a female, you're over the 30+% on body fat, that should be a priority, right? Like let's get that down into a healthy place. Now, the cool thing is as a female, you can be 28, you can be 18. They're both healthy, right? Like the question I always like to re-ask is like, what feels sustainable, right? Like you can be 18, but it's just going to require a lot more sacrifices. You have to be more disciplined on your training. You have to be a little bit more dialed on nutrition. Your sleep and recovery protocols are going to need to be there. You're going to need to manage stress well so your body's not working against you. So like you can get there, but the question is that sustainable for a long period of time? But from a data tracking perspective, yes, let's look at weight. Yes, let's look at muscle mass. Yes, let's look at body fat. Okay. Second thing for me is when it comes to tracking and as far as seeing progress, look at your workouts, track your runs and the times that you're getting and the heart rates you're doing, track the weights that you're using, right? When you think about progressive overload, right? This will eventually, I think, be an episode for me because I've had it in my notes for a while. Progressive overload is basically I'm either adding more weight over time, I'm adding more volume of the same weight over time, I'm adding more range of motion over time, I'm adding more tempo or time under tension over time. Like there's so many variables that we can look. So I'll give you functional lifestyles approach. We look at weight, or we look at volume of weight, I'm sorry, or top set, like overall weight that you're using, right? So I'll give you an example. I'm doing 4 sets of 8 on an exercise. We only track the heaviest sets. Let's say you did 2 sets at 80 pounds and 2 sets at 100 pounds. I'm going to put 2 by 100 in the system. But then next week, what I'm going to tell you is I'm going to say, instead of us going 2 for 105 and just trying to always increase weight every week, let's go for volume this week. Let's try to do 3 or 4 sets this week at 100. So same weight you did last week, but just more sets. That's a PR, right? A personal record, right? For those that know PR. Or what I could do is, let's say I had 4 sets at 100 last week. Now let's try to do 2 sets at 105, or 1 set at 105, or 2 sets at 110, something like that. So now we're going to go for a little bit more top set, which is meaning like I'm going to actually push the weight. And even though my volume of the amount of sets doing that weight is going to be lower from the previous week, my weight's higher. And I generally like to keep this kind of A-B approach to the actual cycle, right? We can obviously track range of motion. We can track time and retention, things like that. But for us, we just look at those two. Then I look at conditioning, right? For conditioning, I either like to have measurables that are for time or for reps. So if I'm giving you an AMRAP, where I say, hey, it's an 8-minute clock, you got to do these 3 exercises for 10 reps each, do as many rounds as you can. I'm going to track the amount of rounds and reps that you get. So this way we have a target to shoot for next week, right? Or for something a little bit more specific that as far as analytics can break down, go on a run, go on a bike, go on a swim. And what I'll do is, like, I had this little run that's about 4 miles that I like to do from my house around Creek Trail and back. It's like just shy of 4 miles. What I'll look at is like, what was my pace at, right? I like to look at what was my heart rate at. Like, let's say I kept the same pace, but instead of being in zone 3 or zone 4, I was in zone 2. Okay, that's me improving my aerobic capacity, right? That's me getting in better cardiovascular shape, right? What if I improve my pace? Then I'm actually getting faster, right? What if I'm able to do that faster? What if I'm able to do it at a lower body or beats per minute, right? So like there's variables that you guys can look at, but I think performance tracking is such a big thing. That's going to allow you to A, systematically know how to progress your overload correctly. And B, it's going to give you obviously some motivation, because you're going to be like, oh yeah, cool. Like I'm faster than last time, right? Or hey, cool. I'm actually able to keep my heart rate lower at the same pace, right? And that's where obviously how your programming is going to be correct, right? And then the next thing that we look at is we look at movement, right? So we do what I call my ghetto rigged FMS, functional movement screen. The way that they kind of go about their system is, I don't know how many total. I think they have 7. So they have like 7 on theirs. I think ours is 6. 6 of them is scored. 0, 1, 2, and 3. 0 is pain. If anything on this test today hurts, automatic 0. Very rare to get zeros, but it's there for a reason. 1 is dysfunction, which means you have range of motion. You just don't have enough of it to be doing a deep squat. You don't have enough of it to do a shoulder press overhead correctly. You maybe don't have enough dorsiflexion to be able to go on a run or do a full squat, whatever that might be, right? Then 2 is functional, which means you have everything I need to be in this gym and go play sports and live a normal life, right? 3 is perfection. You have everything I need and more. Like you're kind of showing off borderline, right? So it's like I always tell people, if you give me 2s and 3s, life is good. If you have 0s and 1s, those are red flags. Those are things that we should just address in the beginning. Now, why I like objective data on mobility is because when I'm going to go through a mobility assessment with you, not assessment, but I'm going to give you mobility homework. I'm going to give you these things, right? I'm going to give you a section for release and soft tissue. I'm going to give you maybe a couple stretches that you can do, dynamically, corrective, static, whatever it might be. Then I'm going to give you a couple drills for strengthening those antagonist motions. Each individual step, I'm going to reassess. Because what if I foam roll your calves and you go from a 1 to a 2? Okay, cool. We have some neurological tension there, right? So that's going to be something that we know just with foam rolling, I can add the range of motion that you need to have adequate range to squat or run, right? What if I foam roll and I don't see that much, right? Then I do foam rolling and then I follow it up with some stretching, and then suddenly the stretch gets me to a 2. I'm like, okay, this stretch is going to be something. It's like, I want to look at low-hanging fruit, right? This is the point of data. This is the point of reassessing. And I can cherry pick, okay, this specific drill that I gave you the most dramatic return on your investment, right? So what I want you to do to not waste your time is don't do everything I showed you today. Let's do these 2, because those 2 made the biggest change, right? You know, whatever strengthening drill, stretching, lengthening drill, or like soft tissue, I just go through those reassessments and I reassess and retest, because that data is going to allow me to do that. And then for you guys as a client, or as anybody that's seeing the data in front of you, even if it's for yourself, you can go, okay, like, hey, if I got all 2s, for example, like on ours, that would be what is it, 12. So it'd be like a 12 out of 18 as far as like a perfect score goes. 18 out of 18 would be a perfect score, right? So it'd be a 12, right? Meaning like I have room to grow, right? If I had ones, I would focus on how do I get that 1 to a 2. And then when I get that 1 to a 2, it's like little win, right? So that's going to be one of those big things, right? So those are the 3 that I look at like with us as functional lifestyles. So let's look at weight and body composition. Let's look at performance with strength and conditioning, aerobics, whatever. And then let's look at mobility. Okay, now we're going to get a little bit deeper into some of the wearables, and then we're going to kind of segue into nutrition. Wearables for me, amazing, right? I love wearables. I think this is my 3rd season of using it. And what I mean by season is I'll use it for a period of time, months, a year, maybe a couple of years, and I'll kind of get off of it. And I'm like, okay, I kind of got what I need to do. Now it gets to a point, like if you're using data tracking and you're not now changing anything in the lifestyle, I almost think at that point, just don't track, right? And the reason why is just going to remove a possibility of creating anxiety. It's going to remove a distraction for you, because if you're not doing anything to take action to change, what's the point of you continually doing so? So I do think about that with like Whoop, and that's just why this is like my 3rd time doing it. And generally why I get back on it, it's like, I'm like, I need something to kind of get me to take this serious. I need something to kind of pay attention, or maybe I'm feeling off, or my energy's not right, or I feel like my sleep's kind of gotten worse, or I want to look at my training, or hey, I want to take my aerobic a little bit more serious again, right? So whatever, like the motivation to get back on, that's subjective maybe. But here's the things I like about Whoop. Number 1, it's going to give you a score on performance, right? So Whoop, Oura, Apple, I think they all kind of do the same thing. First thing they're going to look at is resting heart rate throughout the night, right? This is going to be a telltale sign of like, did you eat too late? Did you have too much alcohol? Did you have too much caffeine? Did your sleep quality suck? Is your body stressed out? Is you more sympathetically driven today? Whatever it might be, right? So resting heart rate, ideally, we want this as not as low as possible. We want it lower, right? You know, like when you think about the old school knowledge of like 60 to 80 beats per minute at rest, when you think about that at night, like a really, really healthy person, I would say this cardiovascularly more than anything. I don't want to say like if you have 60 beats per minute, you're unhealthy, because it's still a great range. But you see someone that's very aerobically fit, they'll get into the 50s, they'll get into the 40s. And some people, even the crazy freaks, will get into like the high 30s. I will tell you this from experience. The pandemic was probably the last period of time that I was really, really consistent with running probably about 4 or 5 days a week. And I was drinking this probably more than I normally do. And I drink, like I have red wine every night. So like I was drinking more, because I was like, after I work out and did some reading, and then, well, fuck, I'm just going to start having a beer. But that was the pandemic time. It was interesting. My heart rate and my HRV were the best they ever were, right? And I was drinking more, right? And it's interesting to show you that like, a lot of times we view, and I will say this in the fitness world, I know a lot of people, even on my team, even myself, or just a lot of people that are affiliated in this industry with me, that only prioritize strength training, right? And from a health perspective, it's not ideal, right? Even if you look great, like the bodybuilders, you need to have cardiovascular training. You need to have aerobic stuff. And I will say, from my own personal bias, it's the hardest thing to motivate yourself sometimes. And you need to have a lot of zone 2, a lot of aerobic work, and you need to have a small amount, maybe 20 minutes to an hour a week of like zone 4, zone 5, like really high intensity interval type of training. So if you're not tracking that, you're not going to know how that's going, right? So we want to see our resting heart rate ideally over time kind of trending down, right? There's seasons of it that are going to be going up, going down, whatever that might be. There's going to be specific nights. Like if I eat something really late at night, it just completely ruins my resting heart rate, my HRV. HRV is another one that I love. So HRV is kind of, I would say, really one of the best metrics we have to look at your autonomic nervous system. Are you more sympathetically driven? Or are you more parasympathetic? You know, there's a question that like is common of like, what is a good HRV? And that's kind of like saying like, what is a good deadlift? You know, like I can give you ranges of like, oh yeah, if you could deadlift twice your body weight, that's phenomenal. But like how realistic is that for like Gen Pop, right? So it's like, oh, if you could deadlift your body, that's also phenomenal. So I think there's like context to that answer still. I'll give you my answer of what I try to do. Ideally, I would love my HRV to be as close to my resting heart rate, or ideally above. So if my resting heart rate was 60, I would love my HRV to be at 60 plus, right? Now, that being said, I would say the last like 3 months, I have not been there. My resting heart rate's actually been a little bit higher than my HRV. It's like my HRV was like in the 50s. My resting heart rate's in the mid 60s, low 60s. And it's because I'm not really been doing as much aerobic as I should. I've been eating really late. So I really haven't prioritized the things that are going to change that metric as much. And like, that's why one thing for me, it's like, and I will say the last like few weeks, I'm getting a little bit better with adding more and more aerobic stuff, but like, I'm still not where I want to be for that number. Like when I was in the pandemic, my resting heart rate was probably in the mid to low 50s, mid 50s probably. So like almost 8 to 10 beats higher now than I was then. My HRV was anywhere from probably 60 to 80 for the average and sometimes 100 plus. So like there's a lot of variability that can happen, but also understand that change can happen pretty fast. Then we like to look at respiratory rate, right? We like to look at skin temperature. These are things that can, even from a sickness perspective, can kind of give you some like leading indicators of like, oh, if respiratory rate increases pretty fast or skin body temperature increases pretty fast, we can maybe assume maybe my body's coming under the weather a little bit. If I have HRV tanked and I have my resting heart rate up and I have my sleep performance metrics down, I'm just going to take workouts a little bit easier. Today actually is a good example. I have normally during the week, I feel like I have pretty good scores. Today I didn't. So today I'm just gonna take a little bit easier of a workout. I might just do like a little bit of arms, a little bit of core, maybe more mobility, maybe more zone 2, like whatever I decide to do today. But like that's the data, right? Like use the data to track that. On the sleep side, what I like to use Whoop for or any of those sleep trackers for is like what's the amount of deep sleep? What's the amount of REM sleep? What's the amount of time that I was actually awake? The efficiency of that sleep is basically what that's telling me, right? The timing of my bed, sleep consistency. Am I going to bed at similar times? Am I waking up at similar times? If there's irregularity in your sleep consistency, like I talked about last week on the episode, you're going to see some negative changes and impacts on sleep and circadian rhythm. So look at all those data, right? So I would say that's kind of a big piece for me, right? Next part, kind of segueing into another data thing that we can track is nutrition, right? There's things like Chronometer. There's things like MyFitnessPal. There's so many apps out nowadays. Like I can go down the laundry list of them. Chronometer I used for a while because it got better into the micronutrients. So it kind of really showed you the amount of vitamins and minerals you're getting through your diet versus FitnessPal. It does, but maybe not as detailed. But it's good because you guys want to look at, hey, if I have a calorie goal or a weight loss goal, we want to look at calories, right? If I have a body composition goal, I want to look at macros. So I want to look at how much protein, fat, and carbs I'm getting and fiber and alcohol and water. If I have a health goal or an energy goal or a feeling goal or a longevity goal, I want to look at the amount of micronutrients I'm getting into and make sure I'm getting the right things to support those processes. And if you're not tracking it, you're kind of guessing. Now, at the end of the day, it's not rocket science. If you're eating a pretty diverse selection of produce and you're eating, animal proteins like nose to tail, then yeah, you're probably going to get a lot of the good stuff there. But for most of us that don't have that education yet, use the tracking, use the data tracking, right? I've used continuous glucose monitors before. I will say I only did that for about 3 months, and it was kind of cool to show you that like eating late at night, how like damaging that was to blood sugar, or like what the sauna did, what the cold plunge does, what the exercise does. But really, I think for me, it's like, at my age, like I don't think it's something as big of a priority as some people that are maybe a little bit older in your 40s, 50s, 60s, like you can start to make that maybe more of a priority where you kind of can use that annually. But yeah, so like I think like just to kind of wrap that up on the health side, like there is a lot of things that we can look at, right? So like on the stress and sleep side, I like to look at kind of HRV, right? On the stress side, I like to look at HRV. On the sleep side, I like to look at like deep and REM stages and those type of things. On the nutrition side, nutrition calculators, trackers, micronutrient trackers, whatever the hell you're going to look at is your priority. On the fitness mobility side, I can use mobility assessments. On the fitness side, I can use tracking my performance with my volume or weights. All the other stuff I think is tracking. Like if I already just kind of give you lifestyle things to finish off today, I think like understand the priority of awareness, right? Like awareness is going to allow you to build a foundation to hopefully take action towards executing on fixing the problem. Like for me, running the business, I will always say I've always been a very data-driven person. That's how my dad was. He was just always just like, he knew the numbers to the penny. And that's how I run the business personally, is like I'm very aware of like the amount of money coming in this month, the amount of money going out, the expenses, future expenses, how much we need to be saving, where do I need to be invested to make sure these things are growing. Personal side, and like not everyone is that. And I think like, my wife is a perfect example. Like the reason why we always joke around that, like when we got married, that I was definitely taking over the finances. I'm like, I think the only time she checks her bank account is when I tell her to open it up. Like, sorry, babe, I'm blasting you on the world, but in public. But like she's just not someone that's like aware of those things, right? And it's like fine, she's still got money. It's not like she's a negative in debt, but like for me, it's like how the hell do you live without knowing what the hell's coming in and out? But for her, this is kind of the thing that I would say that I can wrap up all this stuff. If you're in a good enough place, if you're able to afford the lifestyle you want to live, if you look the way you want to look, if you feel the way you want to feel, if you're sleeping the way you want to do, like whatever it is, then there's something to give yourself some credit that intuitively you're doing the right thing. Do you need to track finances the rest of your life? Do you need to track nutrition the rest of your life? Do you need to wear Whoop? Do you need to track your performance? The answer is no. I think in the beginning stages, yes. If I was your financial manager, the first thing I'm going to ask for is bank statements, P&Ls. Like I want to look at what's going in and out so I can help you manage it moving forward. Like what gets measured gets managed. It's as simple as that, right? So it's like if you're not measuring anything, then you're really just guessing along the way. So it doesn't matter what it is. Like I said, it doesn't matter if it's business. It doesn't matter if it's your personal finances. It doesn't matter if it's your health. But like, the last thing, I totally almost forgot about this. Blood work, right? There's so much, like even on Whoop, I just purchased it through Whoop probably 2-3 weeks ago. I need to go get it done. But blood work, right? I used to go to like a company called Inside Tracker. So you go to like Quest Diagnostics, pull blood, and they're going to give you a full panel. Some of these companies like Function Health, I think probably does the most now. And I think they do 168 biomarkers. Whoop, the one they do through here. The cool thing is they upload it to the app, which I kind of like, but that is, I want to say it's 65 biomarkers. But yeah, we want to look at hormones, right? We want to look at, when you think about health, I think there's so much things that are coming out now in the AI world and the tech and the conversion of all these things together that like the more things I can have in one place, the more things that we have opportunities to take action on, right? And I think the thing that's getting cool with AI is now instead of just having data presented to you, not knowing what to do, we can take the data that we're using and instead of going to a professional or things like that, like AI is going to get you 90+% of the way with all these things nowadays. So it's like you can upload your panel and say, okay, what are the things that I would suggest? Now everyone's going to say, like even AI is starting to get regulated like that. And I hate it because I'm like, I don't care. I trust AI more than I trust doctors and people nowadays. The sad reality of where I'm at life. But like, it's like, I cannot give you these investing tips advice, right? I cannot give you this health advice, right? But whatever. I mean, like blood work is obviously a huge one that I would suggest. If you're 40 plus, I would say you should probably be doing this twice a year, right? Maybe for sure once a year. If you're less than 40 years old, I would say once a year is totally fine, right? Unless there's something that you have health things that you need to be working and optimizing. But understand the power of blood because that's going to tell you internally what's going on. There's like other companies called like, what's the name of it? Rhythm, I think. Rhythm is like this little, it looks like a continuous glucose monitor, so a small little micro needle. Put it in your shoulder, it draws this little cute vial of blood, and you send it in every month. So it's like a monthly blood test. I'll give you my true opinion on it. I think it's a little excessive. Like, do you need to be doing blood that often? Probably not. But if you're someone that's really just like a data whore and loves to see it all the time, go for it, right? But I don't think like the need for it is that critical, right? So the last thing that I'll leave you on the data tracking. Wherever you are to wherever you want to be, reverse engineer what you feel is missing. And if you don't know what's missing, ask a professional like myself in the space or ask AI, ask anybody that knows what you need to do. And then reverse engineer the things you need to fix it. So if it is a weight goal, sure, there's going to be a lot of things in nutrition you probably should be tracking, right? There's going to be a lot of things in exercise. If it's getting out of pain and a pain management goal, yes, there's going to be a lot of things on the mobility screen, a lot of things on the movement counting, step counting, steps. I almost overlooked that one, counting your steps for the day. It's funny when I asked, even when I was asking ChatGPT last night, I was like, give me a bunch of research, like published articles that present like supporting arguments and counter arguments to what I'm talking about as far as you can't hack what you don't track. And it was cool to see all the data that was actually supporting it, that it was like the adherence for people is through the roof. The people that actually tracked it for steps were walking an extra 30% more than people that weren't tracked. Like all these things were just kind of supporting that, like it creates awareness to then create action, right? But like I said, when you look at the goal, is like when you reverse engineer it, whatever it is specifically you're trying to solve, that's where I would put majority of your eggs in that basket. You do not need to be tracking everything. Sure, if you love data like me and it gets you excited and it doesn't create anxiety, track it all. I love data. I mean, I really do. I like, for me, I look at my bank account multiple times a day. I look at QuickBooks multiple times a day. I look at analytics on social media for the podcast, YouTube. Like when I think about the business, I look at my Whoop multiple times a day, right? Like I like the data. I think for me, it's like exciting. So as long as it's exciting in a healthy way, then I would continue doing it and like add as many data points as you want. If you are somebody that gets a little anxious, then maybe be a little aware of like how you're going about that. Because if you're doing too much to create anxiety and that actually gets you kind of at a stalemate, then I think that can actually probably be a negative consequence for you, right? All right, guys. Well, hope you enjoyed that one. Hope you find something that you guys can track. If you guys are thinking about doing the nutrition challenge, if there's someone listening to this that's a member of Functional Lifestyles, my big little secret is I'm going to be using Whoop for this challenge. So buy yourself a Whoop or an Oura ring if you want to do that so you can get ahead of the game and start using it already. But I will see you guys next week. Take care.